Hello and welcome to the Supercast. I'm your host, Superintendent Anthony Godfrey. She has taken the Bingham High School girls softball team to multiple state championships in her time as head coach. But when the state title proved elusive for years in a row, someone close to Coach Jackson didn't give up. On this episode of the Supercast, find out how, despite his own battle with Alzheimer's, Coach Jackson's dad stood by the team and was in the stands cheering them on to victory once again at the last game he would ever see. It's an inspiring story you don't want to miss. We're here with head softball coach Mickey Jackson at Bingham High School. Mickey, thanks for taking time.
Thanks. Glad to be here.
We are now up to 9 championships for you here at Bingham in softball. Is that right?
Yeah.
Tell me about why this particular year was so special.
I think there's a lot of reasons. I have personal reasons, and then I have the actual coaching reasons. And it feels like a long time since we've enjoyed being on top and having the escort home, all the excitement of that. And
when was your last state championship?
It was 13 years ago.
Okay.
And so, we've been there. We've been in several state championship games since then, but we just didn't get over the top. And so to finally get back on top feels awesome.
And I understand you've had 8 close calls, right?
Yeah.
8 close calls where you're almost there.
Yeah.
And tell me about this team this year. What happened over the course of the season, and what got them over the hump finally?
Yeah, I think this group, there's always that mix of talent and effort, but then there's got to be that I call it the magical ingredient, and that's loving each other. And this group definitely grew close. They came in close, but they learned to care and take care of each other in different ways as the season went on. Plus, they are young, and so they were maturing. The more experience they got, understanding that their character is not, who they are isn't based on an error or a success, but that's icing on the cake. But who we are makes us the results that we get.
Softball is, of course, a team sport, but it's a team sport where your individual errors or shortcomings are on full display.
Yes. Yeah.
Tell me about some of the things that you've had to overcome, some close calls in the season, maybe, that where you really saw what the girls were made of.
Well, we, and I think you're right. The focus is on those individual successes and failures, but overall, all of those come together to make that. And we had some times when we didn't get over the bump.
Yeah.
We are one strike away against Riverton in that first game this year.
Yeah.
And our sophomore pitcher's on the mound, and she's doing great, fouling off, and they got the better of that at bat, and they end up on top. That's, it's a game of inches, half an inch fair or foul. And just from that game on, just helping the kids understand how to work through those moments and that maturity that kept growing stronger and stronger. Sometimes those failures make that strength later on, and I think we saw that with this group. They got stronger because of it.
What was the makeup of your team? Was it you said that they're now more experienced than they have been. Did you have a lot of seniors this year?
We had 3 great seniors. Shelby has been on the mound for us. She pitched almost everything last year for us. This year we had Brecca come in as a sophomore, and she took some of that load off of Shelby so Shelby could play elsewhere. And then we have Braxton, who can play pretty much anywhere on the field and is primarily a middle infielder. And then Charity, our catcher and left fielder. So all 3 of them are significant players. Beyond that, we had one junior that was playing most of the time, and the rest of them are sophomores and freshmen.
Oh, wow.
So it's a young group.
There are great things ahead for
Yes.
Bingham softball.
Yes. And the kids that played behind those guys got a lot of time this year. Behind Charity is a sophomore, now a junior catcher, and Braxton has another kid sitting right behind her that's been working into her spot as well.
Good. That's great.
They're all, I can't say they're all perfectly replaceable, but that group coming up is working hard and has the ability to do it.
That's great to hear.
Yeah.
Tell me about how the tournament works for those who may not be aware. It's double elimination.
Mm-hmm.
And tell me about the journey this year.
Well, and it's double elimination, but they do break it out into the brackets. And so we have a 4-team pool, and then there's a second 4-team pool. And we went in as the 4 seed, with Riverton being the 1 seed. And, we had PG, in there. So you kind of, the seeding is how that's all broken out. So you play the same teams 3 or 4. It's almost like the Women's College World Series. In fact, it is. You have your seedings through the regionals, and then if you drop that game, you're going to come back to that person that sent you to the losers bracket. That team is going to come back at you. So we had PG, and in that game, even more opportunities to grow because our backs were against the wall multiple times with runners. Our pitching helped us a lot. Hitting kind of came around. Then we had Riverton, who had already beaten us 2 times in several years. In a row.
Now, psychologically, that's pretty tough
Yeah.
to face down someone who's beaten you in this situation more than once.
Yeah, because they've had great teams for years down there, and and there's been a mutual respect of our 2 teams, in that we know that we've got 2 great teams coming at each other each time we play.
Yeah.
And so, I just watched. It just felt like the kids were different this time. I think the 2 losses earlier, they were like, okay, we're done. We're done with this. But then they went up 5-1 on us, and we clawed our way back. In the second game, I guess it was. But getting through that one.
So you're down 5-1 in the second game.
Yeah.
What was the final score?
7-6.
Oh wow.
So we went 5-1. I think it was 5-3, and then 5. I can't remember exactly, but I know we were still down 1. Because I remember thinking, do I want to give up this out and bunt, or do I want to bring them around? And we bunted and we brought 2 around, and we scored 2 more in the next inning, and we had to hold them that bottom half of that inning because we were visitor the entire way through the tournament because of our number 4 seed.
It's been 13 years since you had a state championship, and we've talked about why that was exciting this year for the team. Let's talk about why that was exciting for you personally.
My dad has Alzheimer's. And we've been going through the late stages with that, and especially about, I guess it was the second week of May, he was pretty close to leaving us. He was in really rough shape, and I spent about 5 nights with him in the hospital, by his side in the hospital, and I kept thinking, we're so close, Dad. Hang on. I just want you to see us play again one more time. And our game times for the afternoons don't work with somebody with Alzheimer's, with the Sundowners. And I knew that 11 o'clock game in the championship was the way he was going to be able to come. But unfortunately, those couple of days ahead of time, he wasn't drinking or eating anything. They couldn't get him to wake up. It just wasn't looking like it was going to happen.
And he's been in the hospital all this time.
Well, he went back to the care center that he was in. We got him healthy enough. He had a few infections and things that week that he was there. And my sister happened to be in Europe at the time. Finally takes the family trip that is overdue by years, and about 4 or 5 days after, I'm thinking, he can't pass while she's gone. Right. We've got to keep him alive long enough. And we got him to where she got home just a few days before state. And she said, well, we'll try. Well, let's do everything we can to try to get him there. So we start the game, and then I heard my sister's voice in the stands, and I couldn't see where she was, but I could hear her. And she stood up and waved her arms, and she pointed down, and my dad was right there. And so my dad got to attend that game, and she told me later that morning the nurse called and said, you're not going to believe this, but your dad got up this morning, he ate his breakfast, he drank his juices, he's sitting in the chair. If you want to come get him, I think we can make it work. And so after the game, I went back up to him. I ran up to talk with him, and I said, hey, Dad, it's Mickey. And he didn't really respond too much, a little bit of his little quirk that he acknowledges you there. Yeah. And I said, Dad, my girls are champs. I leaned down to his ears. I said, my girls are champs, just like everything you've always taught me to be. And his eyes came open. He smiled. The first smile, the first acknowledgement, and he reached out for me, grabbed my hand, and then put his other hand over the top of mine. And that is more purposeful movement than we've seen in the last 3 months from him. Wow. It's a moment that I will never, ever be able to replace.
That's miraculous that you were able to have him there.
Yeah.
It's the time of day it worked, and he held on through that.
Yeah. Yeah.
How's he doing right now?
Well, unfortunately, we're probably going to take him home tomorrow to California. I'm going to do the parade with the girls, and then I'm heading out. And we don't know how much longer we'll have, but we got through that game. We got through a happy moment for him. I could see him watching and scanning the field at times, even from down at third base. I'd look up there. A couple times he was sleeping, which is fine.
Sure.
But a couple times I could see him scanning, and my sister said, Mick, he's not been that alert the whole time she's been back. And,
wow.
And it's been great. So, we don't know if we have days with him next week or if we have a month. We don't know, but we're gonna bring him home. So.
But an additional moment of pride in his daughter and her accomplishments.
Oh yeah, and he was the kind of dad. I mean, we know as educators, we know how much parents put into their kids, and you can appreciate this. When we moved from Southern California, we moved to a town of 200 people.
Yeah.
They had a K through 8 one-room schoolhouse in this town.
Wow.
And so at that time, we lived 20 miles out of town. I'm too young to drive still, and I'm doing pentathlon. So he built me a long jump pit. And we get a bunch of mattresses, and we have a high jump pit. That's the kind of dad. He was always making ways for me to be successful, and my siblings as well.
So he really went out of his way to create opportunities where
Absolutely.
in a small town, they weren't just available around the corner.
Yeah, yeah.
Tell me about some of the other ways that he impacted you as a person, as a coach, as a teacher.
I think he always had like an expectation that we would do our best. But it wasn't a pressure. It was just the way he lived himself. And he was so selfless that, personally, I can't even think of things that were his love, things that he liked to do, because everything was always taking us to go. Like we have this lake that we go to. My sister and I run a youth camp up in the mountains by this lake. Or my sister does, and I help her out sometimes, but the family is up there. And my dad, when we go to this blue lake, he's always the one fixing everyone's campers and boats and stuff like that. And, he's just always doing for others. And there was a joke, we were out there celebrating his 70th birthday, and one of the persons got up and said, well, he just travels around to all the widows, and he's always taking care of all the widows in town. He had this little circuit that he would drive around. He's just a very selfless person. And I think that you just internalize that. When you live around it, you just internalize it. And I think that's the biggest gift he's given me personally.
That's amazing. How did he impact you as an athlete and as a coach? Are there some philosophies that you bring to coaching that came from the way that your father has lived his life?
I think probably some of it is, I like to break skills down to teach them. And I think that comes from him. He was a mechanic, and so, this part goes with this part, goes with this part, and maybe that's why my mind is a science mind too. But I think, I'm the one that tries to see what skills need to improve and how to fix those. And then I think the way he was always patient teaching us how to do something, like even a part, fixing a car or something like that, which I'm not very good at because he always did it for me.
But his patience in talking you through that and teaching you has translated into the way that you interact with your athletes.
Yeah. Sometimes I'm probably not as patient as my dad was with me, and things. But I try to remember that every one of those kids out there is someone's daughter, and that person is a kid that's growing up that may not understand the game. I look back at things that I know about the game now that I never even thought about. There's a maturity that goes on in what we're ready to learn. It's like in math. It's like in science. Some brains are ready for this right now. Others are going to take 3 more years before their brain's ready for that. And you just try to take wherever those kids are at that time and build the best you can inside of them. And I think that comes from my dad and my mom. My mom's pretty wonderful too.
Yeah, I don't doubt it. Stay with us when we come back. More with Coach Mickey Jackson.
Does your student want to become a veterinarian, commercial pilot, programmer? Maybe they want to make a difference as a dental assistant. These are just some of the programs offered as part of Career and Technical Education, CTE, in Jordan School District. CTE provides the technical skills needed to prepare students for future employment or for a successful transition to post-secondary education. Career and Technical Education provides work-based learning opportunities. We partner with industry experts to offer apprenticeships and internships with students working in the real world at real jobs while going to school. The CTE experience starts in our elementary schools with the Kids Marketplace and grows through middle and high school. To explore all CTE has to offer in Jordan School District, visit cte.jordandistrict.org today, and let's get your child started on the pathway to a profession.
What got you started in softball? What got you interested in softball to begin with? I assume you played when you were younger?
I did when I was younger. I wasn't in a big city, area where we had summer and travel ball. I just played and I loved it. My mom was one of my first coaches when I was little. And the funny thing is the first team I ever played on, I found out later, we won one game by forfeit. And I was a catcher.
Yeah.
I had no idea what stealing even was.
Right.
I didn't even know stealing existed. I didn't know what it was. So
yeah, sure.
I kind of have a goofy start to that whole thing. But I was in Southern California at that time. Then we moved up to another area. I actually played other sports too. My parents encouraged me to do other things. I played soccer. And I have to think I must have been pretty good because I was scheduled to go to Japan and Europe and stuff like that as a fairly young kid, and then we moved, so I didn't.
Oh, wow.
But and then track, I ran pentathlon. I was a miler when I was in elementary, and then through middle and high school I did the pentathlon. So I was a multi-sport athlete.
Yeah.
But I heard somebody say once, when she figures out softball, her thing, she's going to go a long way. And I guess, I don't know if that influenced my decision to go that way or not. I actually did not play softball my junior year in high school or my senior year. I actually wrecked my ankle my junior year playing. But I went back to track in my senior year. And then I came out to BYU as a walk-on. And
for the softball team?
Yeah, and tried out and got to play.
Great. Tell me about your teaching career. Where have you been throughout the years?
I actually was headed to medical school, and I was accepted to medical school, and my husband wasn't quite done with school yet, so I requested a deferment. I also had some family reasons to stay, and
Sure.
I got it. And I started here at Bingham. I did my student teaching here, and then I just loved it. I loved being in the classroom. And when I was in high school, they had a cross-age tutoring program to kind of prepare kids that they thought had leanings toward being great teacher material, and I was invited to be in that class, and I think that was where some of those seeds were sown, that it was there. But then from there I've been at Bingham. I taught at Copper Hills for a little while over there, primarily chemistry, anatomy, physiology, biology. I have Zoe now, so I've had a little bit of everything. My favorite though probably was action chemistry, when I had the kids that one foot in the court system and 1 foot supposed to be in the classroom,
right,
but not quite there. I loved that. Was early in my career, and I really loved that experience with those kids.
So how many years have you been at Bingham now?
At Bingham itself, I started in 89-90 with my student teaching, and then I was trying to figure that out earlier. Someone asked that. In the middle stretch, I was gone for about 5 years.
Okay.
So,
okay. What do you hope your girls take away from the experience of being on your softball team?
I think particularly this group, the relationships are the things that last. That trophy will always be special to them.
Yeah.
And it's just really special to be able to say you're a state champion. But every year, my hope is that they walk away proud of having been a Bingham minor, but also that those relationships are the ones that they're sending the invitations to each other's weddings, that they're following up. Our 2008 team, 09, 010, that was the three-peat. Those guys still are so in contact with each other. They still are friends with each other, and other groups too. I also kind of find it exciting. I don't know if you're aware of it, but Harriman had 3 previous Bingham players on their coaching staff this year.
Oh,
Nicole just graduated a few years ago. Heidi and Pam played for me in the 90s on state championship teams.
Wow.
And I kind of hope that the impact of having to go through challenges and lead yourself and be an example to others grows in the long run. Miley Zachman is an administrator up in the Davis district. She's out of our program. She came through our program too. I look around and I see so many people that have come through and they're successful. And I'm not saying our program made them successful, because I feel like they also made the program successful because of the traits they brought. But you look at that and you're just excited to see them being happy and successful in their life, and you hope that you had a little little bit of a piece of that future
I love
for them.
that. Well, thank you very much for taking the time, and thank you for all the time you've invested in these athletes over the years. I have no doubt it's a lasting positive influence on everyone that's been on your team.
Yeah. They've been an influence on me too. I'm who I am because of the things I've learned, from the families and the kids that I've been fortunate to have crossed my path along the way. And I just hope that they know how much I love them. And, there's been people that have been happy, sometimes people not so happy, but I love them, every one of them, regardless of what experiences they had.
I'm sure they know that without a doubt. Well, enjoy your parade,
Okay.
enjoy that victory, and my best to you and your family. Thanks for
you.
the time.
Thanks for everything you do for us too. I feel like you really engage with us and you really appreciate us in our district, so thank you.
You guys are amazing. Thank you. Thanks for joining us on another episode of the Supercast. Remember, education is the most important thing you'll do today. We'll see you out there.